Students may access Arts Edge on the internet at this address for 2 weeks after the program with questions for the artists.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm glad you could join us. I'm Billy Taylor. The composition we just played for you was called I Love You. It's by Cole Porter. That's jazz as a way of playing. We took a piece that wasn't jazz and made a jazz piece out of it. Now, on behalf of the Kennedy Center and Prince William County Public Schools, I'd like to welcome you to a demonstration and performance, The Jazz Guitarist. I'd like to welcome, first of all, the students in classrooms all over the country who are watching us, and, of course, the wonderful students here. Give yourself a hand. We're here in the auditorium of the Hylton High School in Prince William County, Hylton High School in Prince William County, and we're in Virginia, of course, and I'm glad you could join us. I'd like to introduce to you at this time the other members of my trio. You just heard Chip Jackson on bass. Steve Johns on drums. And on guitar, our very special guest, Mr. Mark Whitfield. Mark, I'd like to welcome you to Hylton High, and today we're going to examine the role of the guitar. You've had a lot of wonderful experience playing the guitar. How'd you start? How'd you get started on the guitar?
Well, believe it or not, I got my first guitar when I was about 7 years old as a present from my brother.
Really? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Well, was this your first instrument? I mean, was that your first instrument?
Yes, it was. I played the guitar for about 2 years, and then I started playing the acoustic bass in the school orchestra.
The acoustic bass?
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Play
any other instruments?
I played the alto saxophone in the band.
Acoustic bass and alto saxophone?
Yeah, I wanted to be a drummer, but my mother wouldn't let me drums in the house. So
no.
I got her back by making her help me carry the bass around.
That's great. One of the things that you have had to do once you decided to really study music, you had to work and try to get yourself a teacher, and you earned a scholarship. How did you do that?
Well, I played acoustic bass and the guitar also in the jazz band in my high school in New York and also in Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, and you competed?
And we went to high school jazz band competitions that are sponsored by Berklee College of Music up in Boston, and I won 2 scholarships.
2 scholarships?
Yeah.
All right. In what?
Well, guitar and bass.
Well, it's interesting to me that you had an idea of doing something other than playing the guitar. You were studying music? I mean, medicine. You wanted to study medicine?
Well, yeah. In school, my focus was science.
Science?
And, I had an opportunity to attend Georgetown University, and I went on the high school internship program. And,
you did a lot of things. Hey.
So, but I changed my mind, and decided to go into music.
I'm glad you did. Let's get around to the guitar now. You know, a lot of folks, when I asked earlier before we went on the air if anybody played guitar, a whole lot of hands went up. Mm-hmm. So why don't you play something like what they probably have been hearing on the radio? I mean, when you turn on the radio, if you're dialing an AM radio, usually you hear some guitar that sounds...
Showing my age. That's what I heard on the radio when I was a kid.
Yeah. Well, that's certainly something that we hear a lot, but you were influenced by some other folks, in addition to the people who played like that.
Oh, yeah.
Who were some of the people that influenced you?
Well, the first guitar player I ever saw actually play in a concert was Freddie Green, the rhythm guitar player with the Count Basie Orchestra.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How did he play?
Well, his specialized style was playing chords. He played... and so forth, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed you're changing the chords every time, almost
Well,
all beat,
he was
every
famous
beat.
for not playing the same chord twice in a row. So.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's not easy to do.
Not at all.
Now, you have another guitar here, and what's the difference? What is this?
Well, this is just known as an acoustic guitar. The idea of the instrument, how the sound is made, the sound chamber here resonates as the strings are stretched, and then the sound comes from the hole. So you get a combination of the attack of the string, because you can actually hear the string resonate from any point on the instrument, and you also get a warmer sound that comes from the hole itself.
You play a little something on that.
But if I play the same thing I played there, you'll hear that the sound is brighter and a little more percussive, and you can hear the attack more directly because you don't have to wait for the sound, the actual signal to travel through the wire. Through the amplification, you hear it directly. But it's not very loud, so to facilitate playing with a band, it's nice to have amplification and microphones and so forth.
Well, one of the musicians that I remember when I was first starting to learn to play jazz was Django Reinhardt, and he played acoustic guitar.
Sure. Well, Django Reinhardt was out of the French gypsy guitar tradition. And what was unique about him, unfortunately, he had an accident as a child that he burned his hand.
Really?
He was only left with the use of these 2 fingers.
2 fingers?
And he played incredibly dexterous lines with, lots of speed and accuracy with just 2 fingers, something that none of us can do. Certainly I can't do today.
For sure.
But on those early records you hear from the Hot Club of France and the clubs in the 30s, you hear them playing much in the same style of Freddie Green in rhythm, just a lot better. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then he would go along with that by playing fast lines with just the 2 fingers.
Just the 2 fingers.
I'd have to put a rubber band around my 2 hands. Make that happen.
Well, I'm going to give you this one back.
Okay.
And we'll talk about another guitarist who was a big influence on you, Wes Montgomery.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Wes Montgomery was in the tradition that came through all of the from Django through Charlie Christian and other people like that. But what did Wes, what did you learn from him?
Well, I think the main difference with Wes Montgomery is that unlike most guitarists, we all use, most of us use the pick, or you can use a more classical style with you grow nails and use the nails much in the same way you use the pick, like this. Wes decided to play mostly with his thumb. So he played predominantly with his thumb and struck the strings like that. He preferred the sound, and as you can hear, the sound with the pick is brighter and more percussive, but the sound with the thumb is more soft and mellow. So that was Wes's main innovation with sound, and also he was the father of what's known as the style of octaves. Most guitar players played single notes, 1 note at a time, or chords. But Wes decided to combine the 2 by playing the same note in octaves in the place of single notes. So that was a nice innovation as well. And also he was great with chord solos. So where you might play, Wes might say, that kind of thing,
Well, I want to ask you to demonstrate that in the piece. This is a piece written by Miles Davis called Freddie Freeloader.
All right. 1, 2,
Freddie Freeloader. Thank you very much. Now, did you notice that playing the guitar as he's playing, you get a different sound. It's not like a saxophone. It's not like a trumpet. It's a very special sound. And we're going to talk to Mark again about, I mentioned in passing Charlie Christian. Why was he special?
Well, Charlie Christian is known as the father of the modern jazz electric guitar because he was the first guitarist to bring the amplified guitar to prominence. He played with the Benny Goodman Band. And what's special about Charlie in a lot of ways, unfortunately, he died very young of tuberculosis. But in only 3 or 4 years of recording, making records and so forth, he popularized the single-note style of playing. And he played many of the phrases that the horn players at the time were playing, Louis Armstrong and Benny Goodman and such. He popularized the idea that guitar players could play the same vocabulary, the same notes, the same solo ideas on the guitar as well as playing chords and working in both capacities. So he was, I think, the first one to really demonstrate the fact that the guitar is a very versatile instrument. You can play it in the accompaniment capacity or as a soloist.
Well, you're quite a virtuoso yourself, and one of your principal influences was George Gershwin. I'm all right. I know you love to play George Gershwin.
Oh, yeah.
George Benson was the person I was thinking about.
Sure. Well, I saw George play on television when I was about 9 or 10 years old with the Boston Pops Orchestra, and then my father bought me a copy of the Breezin' record.
Breezin'?
Breezin'. That was a big hit
yeah, right.
back in the 70s.
Yeah, okay.
So anyway, I mean, and I heard George, and I was amazed with his technique and his virtuosity. He could play the guitar like no guitarist I'd ever heard.
Well, he plays very fast, and you play very fast. How do you do that?
That's just practice.
Yeah.
Taking simple scales and arpeggios, and like you would do with any instrument, and just through repetition, you build up speed and and technique.
Well, I'm going to demonstrate, have you demonstrate some of the things that you do personally. Your personal style has some elements. You said the first record that you were given was a blues record.
Sure.
I think it kind of made a lasting impression on you, evidently.
Oh, yeah, well, the blues remains, I think, a common denominator between all the musical styles that I play.
Oh, that's great. Well, now, if I asked you to play with just you and Chip, what would it sound like?
All right.
Right. Well, I like that. Now, if you did something similar to that with just a piano, it would have a different sound, like this, maybe. Well, that's a lot of fun for me. But now, how about maybe asking you to do something with Steve Johns, just at the drums?
All right. 1, 2, 3,
Yeah. Well, it's easy to see you can do a lot of different things when you play the guitar, and you can express a lot of different emotions. Now, you have had a lot of experience. Who's some of the people you played with?
Wow, well, over the years I've played with Jack McDuff, the legendary jazz organist that gave George Benson his start. I've worked with George Benson, Quincy Jones, Al Jarreau, Shaka Khan, Carmen McRae, Betty Carter, yourself, Dr. Billy Taylor, Art Blakey, Roy Haynes. I've played with a lot of great, Tommy Flanagan, a lot of great musicians who've given me a lot, the benefit of their experiences.
You have your own records out. Now, what label do you record for?
Now I record for Verve, which is part of Polygram.
When you make a record, I mean, you go into, you're a young man, and you have certain things that you've listened to, certain things you want to do, and you want to say something that's different from some of the people that you've just been showing us. What do you think about when you go in to make a record?
Well, I think a record is much like should be like a concert. It should be an enjoyable experience from start to finish for the listener. So I try to put together a program of compositions that encompass a wide range of emotion and feeling, but are somehow tied together by a common theme. You know, so sometimes I made a record about New York. I made a record about the way that I think the blues has influenced different styles of jazz playing. I made a record with strings with a full orchestra. It's all ballads and love songs. So it's always about a common theme.
Well, now, as I said, there are a lot of young people out here who play the guitar. Do you have any words for them in terms of how they can develop this kind of facility and some of the things that might help them attain the things that you've already got?
Well, I think the easiest thing to do when you're getting started is just to get on the right track in terms of what you need to learn so that whatever style you want to pursue as a guitarist becomes available to you. I mean, you need to learn scales and chords and arpeggios, and there are books and such that will outline those things for you, and a lot of practicing. I think the more time you spend with the instrument in your hands just experimenting and, you know, seeing where your ear will guide you with your imagination.
So hold on to that instrument and see what's happening.
Sure.
Yeah,
good things will happen.
Well, I know we talked about Benson, we talked about Charlie Christian and others. One of my favorite guitarists is a man named Kenny Burrell.
Oh, sure.
And I love the way Kenny plays. Did he have any influence on you? If so, what do you think? What do you like about his playing?
Great influence on me. I think Kenny Burrell has a very elegant approach to playing. It's very smooth. And when I say that, I mean some of the things I do are sort of abrupt and you know, very rhythmic, and certainly Kenny Burrell can do those things. But what he's known for is a great tone, you know, the sound of each note. Which lends itself very well to playing things, ballads and you know, romantic music and so forth. But he has a very smooth, very elegant style, which comes from years of experience and also being just a great musician.
Yeah. Well, we'd like to play something for you at this point that kind of demonstrates what Mark was just talking about. And while we're playing that, we'd like to invite the students in our audience who are looking at us on television to call their questions in at 1-800-578-1396. That's 1-800-578-1396. Now, the song that we're going to play is a beautiful ballad. Kenny Burrell also likes Duke Ellington, and so we're going to play an Ellington tune called In a Sentimental Mood. Thank you. Thank you very much. In A Sentimental Mood. Don't forget that number is 1-800, and it is 1-800-578-1396. We have a caller from Ocean City, New Jersey. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. First, I'd like to say I really enjoy all of your playing. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My question is, have you ever been influenced by like the old blues players like Robert Johnson or Blind Blake or any of those acoustic rural guys?
Have you?
Oh, certainly. I mean, when I got my, I neglected to say when I got my first guitar, my brother's a big blues fan, so he gave me a copy of Anthology of the Blues by Lightning Hopkins. So from there, I checked out Lightning Hopkins and Howlin' Wolf, and then I got into Robert Johnson and so forth. I mean, there's so many great blues guitar players, such a great tradition there. And it's all very related to what we do with the modern jazz guitar.
Any other questions? Do we have another call? We'll take questions from those of you in the audience. Do we have any questions out there? Yes.
Hi, I'm Chris Dixon, and do you prefer playing with or without a pick?
It depends, but my preference is normally with the pick, sure. Yeah.
Any other questions? Come down to the microphone so everybody can hear you. Yes.
My name is Victor von Bernowitz Wright, and this question goes out to Mr. Jackson. Which of the songs is harder for you to play or practice, and which one is the easiest?
Well, they all have their difficulties. Ballads are slower, so you have more time you have more space to deal with. You can't just fill it up with notes. And then the fast tunes are going by so fast, you got to think fast. So you got to learn how to think slow with a ballad and think fast with a fast tune. And then you got a lot of other things, like if you're in 3/4, then you got to think about 3/4 rhythms and 4/4 and Latin rhythms. So, I'd have to answer that question by saying that they've all got their relative difficulties and they're all about the same.
Yes. Yes.
Hi, my name is Catherine Narrow, and I'd like to know, do you have your own band? And if so, how did it get started?
Yeah, I started my own band out of necessity. I was living in New York and wanted to play at some clubs and decided to put a group together and make a demo tape, and that's how I got started. Some musicians that I knew, some friends of mine. You know.
We have a call. We have a call from New York City.
Hi.
Hi.
What school has good music programs?
Which school has good music programs?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, the school I went to up in Boston, the Berklee College of Music, was had a great music program. That's their specialty. There are also schools in Manhattan, the New School, and Manhattan School of Music in Eastman. There's a great program in North Florida, also at North Texas State. There are a lot of universities that have great music programs. You just have to take the time to investigate.
Yeah, that's one thing if you're looking to study music, you really should look very carefully at the things that are available. There are schools in New York City, Miami University, many of the schools that we're talking about on the college level, but in high schools, there are quite a few good programs. There's some down, as a matter of fact, there's one right here in Hylton High. And so look around you and make sure that you're prepared to go to whatever school you'd really like to go to. We have a call from Florida.
Yes, good morning. I can't tell you how much I'm enjoying your program today.
Thank you.
My question for Kenny is that in view of all the modern jazz that's being produced today, there's several artists that I particularly enjoy, people like Russ Freeman, Lee Ritenour, Stanley Jordan, and I'm wondering if any of these artists have influenced your playing.
This is a question for Mark.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I was very taken with Lee Ritenour's playing. I heard him when I was a kid. And I got to meet Stanley Jordan a few times, and we did some concerts together. He has a very unique style where he's taking the two-hand techniques you apply playing the piano, and he plays the guitar like that. I couldn't hope to do it, but it's certainly incredible to watch and listen to. And I think there's a lot of great things out there for all of us to be influenced by and to enjoy.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Marlena Traub, and I wanted to know if living in New Orleans influenced your style of guitar playing. Oh, yeah, definitely. One thing about the sound of the music that comes from New Orleans, even today, they have a tradition all its own. It's not only blues, but it's about the New Orleans Dixieland tradition. And of course, Danny Barker, a great rhythm guitar player and banjo player who played with Louis Armstrong, and all the greats came from New Orleans, and I got to meet him. And there were a lot of things about jazz that are part of everyday life in New Orleans. When you're hanging out in the French Quarter, you still hear musicians playing on the street, playing jazz. That's part of the culture. So it had a great influence on me, certainly.
That's one of the few places in the country where in the daytime you can walk around and hear somebody doing it on the street, and just like they did many years ago. You mentioned Danny Barker. What was special about Danny Barker? Who was Danny Barker?
Well, Danny was a great rhythm guitar player. And guitar was his first love, even though he was more famous for playing banjo. Right. But he played a six-string banjo, so he tuned it like a guitar, and he was a rhythm player. I mean, mostly. Many of those great records that you hear that came out of New Orleans, in the 30s and 40s and so forth, you hear Danny Barker's playing. And I had a great pleasure to meet him and hang out with him some and talk to him about his style. And he tried to talk me into playing the banjo, which
really?
As of yet he has not been successful.
What's the difference between playing the banjo, and I know it's got 4 strings, but what's the difference between playing that and the guitar?
Well, the major difference is just the sound that it produces. I think artists like Bela Fleck, for instance, have certainly proven that you have many possibilities with the banjo as well, but it's just basically a sound difference.
We have a caller from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
My name is Andy from Hylton High School here in Philadelphia.
Where? Where are you from?
Philadelphia.
Yes. What is the school?
Hylton High School.
Thank you. What's your question?
Yeah, this is a question for Kenny. In around 90, there was an uproar with Nirvana and Nevermind. I want to know if Kurt Cobain ever influenced his way of playing guitar, and if only you were just interested in jazz and blues.
Before he answers your question, maybe I didn't introduce him properly. This is Mark Whitfield. Okay. Now, go ahead.
Not really. I am familiar with Nirvana and some of the music, but and there are some rock guitar players that I do admire. I wasn't really influenced by Kurt Cobain, though.
Yes.
My name's Katie Poston, and
I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Katie Poston.
Yes.
And I wanted to know, what was the first song you ever learned to play on the jazz guitar?
First song I ever learned to play was Billy's Bounce by Charlie Parker.
Well, one of the questions that always comes up, and I think you probably have answered it a lot of times. When you switch from guitar to guitar, does that cause a problem? Are they different in touch in terms of what you have to do?
Yeah, with your electric guitar, it doesn't take much effort to produce the sound. You depress the string and you can play it lightly. So you don't have much effort in terms of strength. With the acoustic, you have to play it's a little more physically demanding. But basically, the guitars feel the same.
One of the things, I think we have a question here from a young lady right here in the auditorium.
Hi, my name is Maura Dorico, and this is for any of you up there. I was wondering, why or why not did you enjoy practicing when you were a child?
Well, I can start that. I didn't enjoy practicing because it was hard, and I really thought there should be an easier way to learn how to play the piano. Unfortunately, I found that there wasn't any easier way, and you do have to practice if you're going to play well. Any other thoughts along those lines?
Well, yeah, when I was a kid, I hated practicing because my mother had a timer that she would set, and it would tick for 45 minutes, and I had to practice until it stopped ticking.
All right.
And I think after that, I got into the habit of it, and it became more enjoyable once I started to do it on my own.
Yeah. How about you?
Well, I enjoyed practicing because I had a good teacher when I first started. Well, she was about 100 years old. And shortly after I started, she passed away, so I guess I put her over the edge. But my next teacher I didn't like so much, so practicing became harder. So I think a lot of it has to do with how you're directed, what you're practicing, and what you're trying to do.
Yeah, at first I really didn't enjoy practicing. I thought it was tedious and kind of boring. But the more I saw other players play, I said I want to play like them. So the only way to get there is to get in the woodshed and really work it out. And I think you have to make a commitment to work on the instrument.
We have a call from New Jersey.
Hi, Bill, Dr. Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much for your years of this fine music that you've been putting out. And I think that this show is very, very educational for the young people, and I thank you. This is very educational. I have a question for Mark. I'm always very concerned that this one guitarist is always sort of forgotten with his fine guitar playing. And I want to know if you can just speak a little bit and educate these young people and find out if Jimi Hendrix was an influence upon you. What did you think about his playing? And can you just tell the young people a little bit about what a fine guitarist this man was? Thank you.
Well, I don't know if I would agree that Jimi Hendrix is one of the unsung heroes of the guitar, but I think he was great. I have several of his records, and one thing about Jimmy that I admired is that he comes from the Delta blues tradition. I mean, a lot of what he did, his playing style and his singing came from the blues greats that he admired, the guys that came from Mississippi and so forth. And
in the Delta blues, what is that?
Well, that's a style that you hear with. Let me turn myself on here.
Yeah, okay.
I got a house up on a hill. And I think what Hendrix did that was so successful and so personable, what people could relate to, is he took that and he turned up the gas some. You know, he added elements of rock and roll and a great band, and he was very dynamic. And I think that those things, coupled with his innovative guitar style,
he's quite a showman.
Oh yeah, and his showmanship also made his performances and his recordings very special. He was a great songwriter as well.
We have a caller from Richmond, Virginia.
Hello. This question is for Mark, and I was wondering if in your band you had any other instruments besides the piano and the band and the bass, such as a trombone or a clarinet?
Yeah, over the years I've used lots of different instrumentations. Alvin Batiste, for instance, played clarinet with me for a while. I've had horns, trumpet, trombone, saxophone, vibraphones, an orchestra. I've tried it all.
What makes you add? What are you looking for when you add, say, a trombone or you add a clarinet? Those are not usually found in small combinations.
Well, I think you're always looking for different textures in music. Mm-hmm. Each instrument has its own sound, its own voice, and adds another dimension to the sound of the group. So, with Alvin Batiste, for instance, I was looking for something. We wanted to infuse a little bit of the New Orleans tradition into the music, so we brought the clarinet in, and we played some things that were sort of modern spins on traditional songs, and we played some things out of the New Orleans tradition.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Zach Strantz, and I have a question for Mark and everybody else up on stage. I just wanted to know if any of you prefer playing a particular style of jazz.
Do you prefer playing a particular style of jazz? He wants to know.
I think it's there are many different periods. When we talk about styles of jazz, it usually relate to periods in jazz history. I think my favorite style of jazz to play would be that comes in the tradition of Wes Montgomery and George Benson. Yeah. Sort of straight ahead swinging jazz, where you can tap your foot to it and still have room to experiment and express yourself, individually.
Good. Steve, what do you prefer?
I prefer, for me, anything that's really is grooving, really has a groove to it. Doesn't matter what type it is.
Chip?
I like all the styles, but I prefer to play modern jazz, which really is takes into account everything that's come before historically, but it leaves you the most room for personal freedom, and that's why it's so much fun to play. You can really put in your own personality and your own input to the modern jazz. That's what makes that music so much fun, as opposed to some of the other musics where you're kind of restricted to playing certain parts. You can't really go very far.
Well, I agree with Chip, and since I'm older than the other guys on the bandstand, I like to go back and play some of the old styles and then come right up and play some of the things that you like to dance to. So I cover the gamut. Depends on who I'm playing for and what I'm playing. We have a caller from Pennsylvania.
Yes, my name's Nicholas. I'm in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. I'd just like to say that I think every single one of you up on stage are outstanding musicians. I'm in a blues band. I live in Maryland, but I'm in a blues band, and I just recently got into jazz. And I was wondering, mainly questions for Mark, is there a big difference in guitar style in big band jazz as opposed to, I guess, what you're playing, which is considered cool jazz, I guess?
Yeah, well, playing the role of the guitarist in a small combo has many more possibilities than it does normally when you're playing in a big band. I mean, here I can play the melodies, take solos and so forth, and comp behind the soloist. But in a big band, you play, the part, just another member in a big machine, mostly reduced to comping and playing in rhythm, and then occasional solos. But it's all basically from the same vocabulary. I think jazz is a general vocabulary that we all draw from, and the guitar pretty much functions as the other instruments do in whatever setting that you're in.
Thank you very much, and thank all of you who had questions. And we're going to take one more question.
How long did it take you to get real good at the guitar?
How long did it take you to get real good?
Well, it's 20 years and counting, so I think it's just, you get better with time, but I'm never completely satisfied with how I play or what I do. You always want to get better and improve, and that comes from continuous practicing and learning, and it's a lifelong endeavor.
I'd like to thank Mark Whitfield for being with us, and I'd also like to thank everyone in the audience for joining us. It's really been a pleasure to play for you. Remember, you can ask us, those of you who are watching us on TV, remember you can ask us more questions via the internet. For 2 more weeks, you'll be able to ask those questions, and all you have to do is use the address that will appear on your screen at the end of the program. Be sure to watch on February 11th at the same time for the next program, which will feature the cast and crew members from the Tony Award-winning play Dreamgirls. Now, they have a program called The Making of a Musical, which I think you're really going to enjoy. We're going to close with a favorite of mine. It's called Just the Way You Look Tonight. Thank you. Thank you very much. We have another question.
Yeah, I have a question for Mark, and I'm wondering if he has any new records, and if so, what theme is it?
Well, the most recent record was put out in September. It features myself on guitars, Nicholas Payton on trumpet, and Christian McBride on acoustic bass. And the theme for the record, it's all the compositions of Herbie Hancock, from the things that he did with Donald Byrd and Miles Davis in the 60s to some of the things he's done with rappers and more contemporary styles.
So you have a wide variety of Herbie Hancock's compositions?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me, what do you think of rap?
Of rap music?
Rap music.
Well, I grew up on Long Island in the 70s, so, I mean, unfortunately, rap to me is a little bit older.
I see. Okay.
So, I mean, you know, I remember...